magandang hapon ulit. Ah, so, nandito na naman tayo sa course na Information Management and ako si Florence Ryan Sotelo, ang inyong instructor. Ang i-discuss natin ngayon ay yung tinatawag na data modeling. And ang topic outline natin, i-discuss natin yung iba't ibang klase ng data models. I-enumerate natin at i-discuss yung types ng data models. And then lastly, yung advantages and limitations ng data modeling. Okay, so ano ba itong mga data models? So, yung data modeling muna. Data modeling is the process of creating data models for the data to be stored in a database. This data model is a conceptual representation of data objects, the associations between the different data objects, and the rules of related to it. So, data modeling is the process of creating data models. And tandaan natin na ito ay conceptual level. Okay. Tingnan natin later kung ano pa yung mga sinasabi dito. Data modeling helps in visual representation of data and enforces business rules, regulatory compliance, and government policies on the data. Normally, pagka meron tayong systems development na activity, lalo na yung mga wala pang sarili talagang software, normally puro paper-based yung mga systems. So ano yung makikita natin sa kanilang business systems na ginagamit to process data? Number one, yung pang data input, yung ginagamit natin ay yung mga paper forms. So minsan isang page, dalawang pages na back-to-back, or may nakikita pa nga tayo mga more than 2 pages na back-to-back na finifill up pa ng mga tao. Okay? So, ayun, isang source ng pang data input, mga paper forms. Then pagka inilagay natin ito normally sa isang paper-based business system, so inilalagay lang ito sa mga folders, and then yung mga folders inilalagay sa cabinet. Okay, so paggagawa ng reports, summary report, iisa-isahing kinukuha ito, yung mga folders at saka yung mga papel doon, yung mga paper forms, and then inilalagay as table format. Okay? So, isa-isa. So, in converting yung paper forms at saka paper reports papunta sa isang database system, database management system, mas maganda kung may represent natin ito sa data models, kasi nga number one, visual, and pagka inilagay kasi natin yung paper format, sobrang laki nun, lalo na pagka in-represent natin in a so from paper forms or paper reports, i-convert natin yon sa isang spreadsheet, sa Excel for example or Google Sheet. So ang problema doon, ang daming madaming columns ang titingnan natin. So 'di ba, mag-slide sa kanan ng isang spreadsheet, may mawawalang column, so hindi natin kita. Samantalang pagka minodel natin, kumbaga hindi lang yung column titles yung titingnan natin, kundi hindi natin kailangang makita yung values nung mga nung per column, pero yung mga column titles lang yung gagamitin natin. So mas mabilis i-analyze. Okay? So, and then actually may mga rules kasi sa pag-handle ng data. Like for example, sa human resources, pagka nag-store ka, for example, ng name, yung name na lang, ang dami nagkakamali nito. Yung tinatawag na suffix, yung junior, senior. Normally kasi, di ba, for example, Ramon Revilla Jr. Nagkakamali yung mga tao na ang pinagsasama sa apelyido ay yung Revilla at saka yung Junior, 'di ba? So, actually mali 'yun eh. Ang magkasama dapat ay yung first name, yung Ramon. Ang naging junior kasi yung Ramon. Naging kapangalan niya yung tatay niya. Okay? So, pagka inanalyze mo yan, ang rule doon is that paghiwa-hiwalayin mo. Meron kang portion ng first name, last name, and then ihiwalay mo yung suffix. Ayan. Tapos pagka magsosort ka, una yung last name, and then hindi kasama yung suffix sa last name, ano? Last name, then first name, and then suffix. Panghuli ulit yung suffix, kung junior or senior. Ayan. So may mga rules yon, mga business rules. Yung isa pa, pagka sa HR, dahil 'di ba sinosort natin 'yan. Ang problema yung letter na enye. Okay? Sa English word, wala namang enye. Ang standard natin sa business standard is enye. Sa business standard, walang enye kasi American English ang ginagamit natin for business standard. Pero sa Philippines, yun nga, kailangan may enye, pero depende sa business rules natin yun eh. Pagka sa company HR, merong mga companies na they choose na i-convert sa N sa anong tawag dito? Sa company records na walang enye, kundi N lang. For company purposes lang. Yung pagre-record nun. Syempre, may naka-attach naman ng mga ng mga personal records, so okay lang. Yan, regulatory compliances sa government, dapat sinusunod natin 'yon sa sinusunod natin kung merong mga policies na ganun. Then data models ensure consistency in naming convention, default values, semantics, meaning yung meaning. Ang ibig sabihin ng semantics ay meaning ng data. Ayan. Security while ensuring quality of the data. Data model emphasizes on what data is needed and how it should be organized instead of what operations need to be performed on the data. Okay, so difference ng data modeling sa program representation. Sa data modeling, importante yung structure ng mga data, how we organize them. So hindi natin kung baga sa data modeling, hindi natin pinakikialaman kung ano yung kailangan mong gawin dun sa data mismo. Okay? So, yung mga manipulation, summarization, so, hindi natin sinasama doon. Okay? Data models like the architect's building plan, which helps to build a conceptual model and set the relationship between the data items. So, parang gumagawa tayo ng blueprint nung ating data architecture. So, yung blueprint kasi, ilang ilang facets yon. Meron kang para lang sa front view, back view, side view, top view. So, may drawing para doon. Meron ding drawing para sa structural. Para makita kung ilang bakal, gano'ng kalaking bakal yung gagamitin sa building mo, ano yung concrete mix, yung pundasyon, kailangan makita din. So, yun yung nasa structural na drawing. Merong drawing sa building architect plan na yung yung tubo ng tubig at saka ng CR, paano magkakabit yun. Electrical plan. So, yung isa, plumbing plan yun, electrical plan. Yung roofing, yung doors. Ayan. So, ganun din sa data modeling. kailangan maipakita natin yung iba't ibang sides, facets ng data management or yung database mo. Okay? There are two popular data modeling techniques. Ito yung entity relationship model or yung ER modeling and the unified modeling language, UML. Depende ito sa sa bansa. Okay. So as far as I know, ang Japan, ang Europe, and some companies in US gumagamit ng UML. Yung entity relationship model, hindi ko lang alam kung sino pa mga gumagamit nito. So, depende sa mga companies dun sa bansa na yun, pero merong at least mga popular. Ayan. And I myself, medyo mas sanay ako sa UML 2.5. Ayan. So, yung ER, medyo ni-review ko lang, pero hindi ko na masyadong nagagamit ito. Okay, why use data model? Ang goal natin in using data modeling is ensure that all data objects required by the database are accurately represented. Omission of data will lead to creation of faulty reports and produce incorrect results. Ganito guys, yung data modeling actually is pamamaraan para ma-document yung ating database structure. And pagka kasi na i-implement na natin yan, na i-program na natin yan, after na may deliver natin yung project, iiwanan na natin yan. Kung sino man yung magme-maintain, dapat mababasa niyan. Mababasa niya yung ginawa natin. Okay? So, pagka hindi natin accurately na ibigay yung plano, yung blueprint ng ating database, kawawa yung kasunod natin and magagalit yung ating kliyente. Ayan. A data model helps design the database at the conceptual, physical, and logical levels. Ayan. So, pinamataas yung conceptual, then logical, ang pinakamababa physical. Physical yung actual na database na. Data model structure helps to define the relational tables, primary and foreign keys, and stored procedures. So, normally, ang mga tables natin, tables ng databases natin ngayon is merong mga primaries, So, yung mga tables natin sa database natin ngayon ay normally mga relational database na. Meaning, per table, may another table na related siya. Kasi nga, for example, yung isang paper form, imagine natin ilang dalawa na back-to-back na sheets na fifilapan, and then i-represent mo siya sa isang data model. Medyo ang daming elements. So, it's good na pwede nating himay-himayin, paghiwa-hiwalayin yung mga elements na yon, and then i-relate pa rin natin para connected pa rin siya. Ayun, and with that, we will be using primary keys and foreign keys for identifying yung mga data sets nila, data instances. Ayun, data instances, okay? Also, we have stored procedures. And later kasi makikita natin yung mga elements na, for example, ang i-store lang natin is yung birth date. Ayan, birth date. Pero, from the birth date, pwede nating i-compute yung age. So, yung computation ng age, pwedeng stored procedure na lang yan. So, kumbaga, tipid sa sa size ng database. Yun nga lang, medyo pag niran natin yung program, sa program naman yun kumbaga mapapasa yung kasi additional na additional na processing yan. Okay? So it provides a clear picture of the base data and can be used by database developers to create a physical database. So, guys, sa isang software development environment, hindi isa lang ang gumagawa ng isang enterprise-wide, for example, na software program, ng isang information system program. Teams usually yan. So, merong business systems analyst. Sila yung gumagawa ng mga plano. And then, ibibigay lang sa mga programmers kung ano yung mga specification, ano yung data model. Pagka nakita natin yung data model, kaya dapat alam na natin kung paano i-code yun. Okay? So, iba ang nagdo-drawing ng data model, ng data models ng system, iba rin yung nagko-code, and then iba rin yung nagte-test. Okay? Magkakaibang teams yun. So, dapat ikaw, sanay kang bumasa ng gawa ng iba. Okay? That's why, normally, pagka meron tayong mga software development projects, may magkahiwalay yung, may responsibilities. Iba yung nag-design, nag-document, at saka iba yung nagpo-program. Kasi ganun talaga sa sa development environment. Okay? Pero dapat familiar ka dun sa iba't ibang positions na yan. It provides a clear picture of the base data. Okay, na pag-usapan natin yan. It is also helpful to identify missing and redundant data. Okay, one of the things na pag-usapan natin later is yung normalization, database normalization. So, ayan, it has something to do with data redundancy. Next is, though the initial creation of data model is labor and time consuming, in the long run, it makes your IT infrastructure upgrade and maintenance cheaper and faster. Ayan. So, isa sa mga symptoms ng bad design, database design, is pagka i-maintain mo. Pagka pangit yung database design mo, ang hirap niyang i-upgrade, ang hirap niyang i-maintain, pero pagka maganda yung pagkaka-design mo, mas mabilis siyang i-upgrade. Okay? Next. Types of data models. So, meron tayong main 3 different types of data models. Yung pinakamataas is yung conceptual na database model. This model defines what the system contains. Ano yung nilalaman niya. This model is typically created by business stakeholders and data architects. And the purpose is to organize, scope, and define business concepts and rules. Normally, yung mga data architect, sila yung nangongolekta ng ano ba yung mga related forms and reports and other data dito sa isang business system. And sila yung gumagawa ng conceptual model. And then yung logical. So from conceptual, medyo simple. Pagka dinetalye natin, pupunta na dito sa logical. Yung logical database models or data models defines how the system should be implemented regardless of the database management system. This model is typically created by data architects and business analysts. The purpose is to develop a technical map of rules and data structures. So, ayun DBMS independent yung ating logical database model. So, given ka ng drawing ng database, dapat may SQL man yan, PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL. So, kung ano man yung DBMS mo, kaya mong i-implement, kaya mong i-program yung database architecture. Ayun, na given dun sa drawing na binigay sa'yo. Okay, ang pinakamababa is yung physical data model. Describes how the system will be implemented using specific DBMS system. This model is typically created by a database analyst and developers. The purpose is to actual implementation of the database. So, ito yung yung physical, normally represented by codes, and yung actual na pag nira natin yung code, Ayun, makita natin yung physical form ng data natin. Okay? So, ito na yung natin, MySQL. Ayan. So, tanda natin, iba't ibang DBMS system, may pagkakaiba pa rin ng SQL on how to implement the SQL. Okay, so, itong figure na pinapakita ko sa inyo ngayon, ayan. So, ang input ng logical modeling, process models and data requirements. So, before ka makapag-model ng data, kailangan alam muna natin ano yung processes ng systems na ginagawa natin. So, normally, bago ka maggawa ng entity relationship model, for example, alam mo na yung, meron ka ng system flow chart, meron ka ng DFD, data flow diagram, at saka, so, system flow chart, process flow chart, and then yung data flow diagram. Pagka meron ka na ng tatlo, pwede ka nang gumawa ng data model mo. Okay? And then, from the logical model, meron tayong technical requirements and performance requirements. Doon natin isasama sa physical data modeling. Okay? So, physical data model. So, pagka meron ka ng physical data model, ready ka na to input or to update yung data. And then, inputting and then outputting of the data. Okay, so yung conceptual model muna. The main aim of this model is to establish the entities, their attributes, and their relationships. And this data modeling level, there is hardly any detail available of the actual database structure. So, three basic tenets of data model are entity. Entity, these are real world thing na nagre-represent nung ating pinanggagalingan ng data. These are represented by singular nouns, For example, person. Ayun, it is an entity. So, pwedeng, tatlo yung pwedeng types ng entity. Pwedeng living entity, non-living entity, at saka conceptual entity. Living entity, for example nga, yung person. For example, teacher. Dapat singular, hindi plural. Mali yung plural na entity name. Yung mga non-living na entity, pwedeng table, or pwedeng office furniture, ayan. Yung conceptual, pwedeng project, pwedeng course. Ito yung mga hindi natin nahawakan. May tawag tayo sa kanya, pero hindi siya nakikita, hindi nahawakan. Ayan. So, ano pang mga, project, course, yung school kasi non-living yun kasi nakikita natin na tatapakan ng school. Conceptual, payment, ayan, concept yun. Check. Sa bagay, yung check kasi, non-living kasi papel yun. Okay, next tenant is attribute. Ito naman yung characteristics or properties of an entity. It describes the entity. So, for example, a person, how can you describe a person? A person or ma-differentiate yung one person to another. So, meron siyang name, for example, meron siyang address, meron siyang age, birth date, ayan. So, attribute yan ng entity. Ayan, attributes ng entity. Okay, so sometimes descriptive siya but not necessary. And then yung pangatlo is relationship. Relationships between entity or dependency and association between two entities. And this is relationships are represented by verbs or action words. For example, a person entity, ang relationship to another person is person manages another person. Ayan. So, yung manages, yun yung relationship. Or At a student enrolls in a school. So, dalawang entities doon, student at saka school. Ang relationship is yung enrolls. Okay, so here is an example of a data model using UML notation. Okay, so yung isa is ARD notation, ito ay UML notation. So makita natin, there are two entities, customer and product. So represented by a rectangle divided into three. Yung pinaka top, ito yung pangalan ng entity name, for example, customer, and yung isa is yung product. And then yung second na division, yung na part nung entity is yung ito yung kanyang attributes, customer name and customer number for customer entity. And then yung nasa ilalim, blank, normally yung nasa ilalim yun yung mga stored procedures, stored process ng ng entity na customer. So currently walang nakalagay. And then sa product, meron ang product, ang entity name is product, ang attributes is product name and product price. And then sa ilalim wala rin siyang stored procedure. Okay, ano yung relationship? Yung sale. So it's an action word, it's a verb, So customer sale, actually dapat sales. Sell or dapat ay buy ito. Parang mali ang pagkakalagay. So customer buys na lang a product. Product name and price are attributes of product entity. Sales the relationship between the customer and the product. Yan. Mas maganda sana kung ang nilagay nila dito ay buy, So, characteristics of a conceptual data model. Offers organization-wide coverage of the business concepts. This type of data model are designed and developed for a business audience. Okay, so the conceptual model is developed independently of hardware specifications like data storage capacity, location, or software specification like the database management system, vendor, and technology. The focus of the conceptual data model is to represent data as a user will see it in the real world. Yan. So, ito daw yung purpose ng conceptual data model. Ito yung user view, kung anong nakikita ng isang user. So, tandaan nyo, ang audience, pagka create kayo ng data model is a businessman, a business manager. Kasi hindi naman hindi mo naman ipagbebenta yung software mo to another programmer. So wag mong gawin na yung documentation mo ay programmer lang din ang nakakaintindi. Dapat yung documentation mo ang makakaintindi ay yung businessman na bibili ng ng software mo. Okay, logical data model. Kanina yung conceptual. Ngayon naman, logical data model. Logical data models add further information to the conceptual model elements. It defines the structure of the data elements and sets relationship between them. So, makita natin dito, same pa rin na entity, customer and product. Same pa rin na attributes, customer name and customer number, pero nilagyan na natin ng and other product, product name and product price, pero nilagyan natin ng specific na data type. For example, yung customer name string, customer number is integer, product name string, product price is integer. Dapat nakalagay na rin dito yung yung tinatawag na cardinality ng relationship, pero mukhang hindi pa niya inilagay. Ayun, so ang nakita lang natin dito, yung arrowhead ay ginawa ng dot dun sa line connecting customer and product. May kailangan pang ilagay dyan, so hindi pa masyadong kumpleto to, pero malapit na ito na logical data model. Okay, the advantage of the logical data model is to provide a foundation to form the base for the physical model. However, the modeling structure remains generic. At this data modeling level, no primary or secondary key is defined. At this data modeling level, you will need to verify and adjust the connector details that were set earlier for relationships. So, characteristics of a logical data model. It describes data needs for a single project but could integrate with other logical data models based on scope of the project. Design and develop independently from the database management system. Data attributes will have data types with exact precision and length. Normalization process to the model is applied typically till the third normal form. Okay, so yung logical data model, ginagamit natin to for data model analysis. So yung conceptual model, ito yung how the user sees uh, the data in the system, while itong logical data model, uh, ginagamit na ito ng mga ng mga data architect to analyze for example, paper-based na from paper-based na system, gagawin natin siyang database or electronic database management system. So, ayun, kailangan na nga natin ng normalization kasi kailangan natin ng ipiprevent natin yung data redundancy at saka medyo yung efficiency ng design natin kailangan natin improve at this point. Ayan. So, kaya medyo may may kumbaga nilagyan natin ng additional details yung conceptual model. So, pagka nilagyan natin ng mas detalyado, ayun, part na siya ng logical data model. And then, pagka may logical data model ka na, pwede na tayong pumunta sa physical data model. The physical data model describes the database-specific implementation of the data model. It offers an abstraction of the database and helps generate a schema. This is because of the richness of metadata offered by a physical data model. So this is ang physical data model is specific sa database management system na gagamitin mo. So for example dito, instead na string yung nakalagay na data type ng customer name, varchar. Bakit varchar? Specific kasi ito sa MySQL. Ayan, ito yung variable character para makapagtipid ng database space. Ayan. And then, in-identify na rin yung primary key and primary key din ng product. Ayan. So, yung mga keys na yung foreign key, wala dito. Okay. And then, characteristics of a physical data model. A physical data model describes data need for a single project or application, though it may be integrated with other physical data models based on project scope. The data model contains relationships between tables that which addresses cardinality and nullability of the relationships. Developed for a specific version of a database management system, location, data storage, or technology to be used in the project. And another characteristics, columns should have exact data types, length, assigned and default values. So yung hindi naman lahat ng data attributes ay may default values, but for those who have default values, ilalagay natin. For example, ang default value is 0. So dapat naka-default siya sa 0. May default value na asterisk. So, dapat may ganun siya. Primary and foreign keys, views, indexes, access profiles, and authorizations are defined. Ayan. So, sa relational database management, meron kang primary Then, kung yung table na yun ay kailangan mong i-relate sa another table, yung primary key ng table na yun, magiging foreign key dun sa uh, isang yung dun sa related na entity. Yung views, ito yung table format ng ating table. Ayan. Indexes. So, normally, kinukuha natin yung index from the primary key. So, basta isa siyang key sa napipiliin natin from the table. So, pag sinabi nating index, may command kasi sa SQL na na nag-create ng index. Meaning, yung index kasi is mainly created for searching yung searching through the dataset. So, meron kang table, yung mga values nun, isi-search niya. Mahirap kasi pagka iisa-isahin yung per row. So, meron na pipili ka lang ng isang column na yun yung gagawin mong index, then dun ka magse-search. And yung index na ginawa mo, naka-format siya na pag-aralan natin sa data structures, yung mga paano gumawa ng mga search keys at saka mga indexes, paano mas mabilis na gumawa ng index para sa search. Ayan. So sineseparate yan from the attributes ng ginagawa yan separate from the attributes ng isang table or ng isang entity para mabilis yung search. Access profiles, so sino yung admin, sino yung users, super users, ayan, ina-identify natin. Ano yung mga pwedeng i-modify ng isang ordinary user, isang limited user, isang admin, etc. And also authorizations. Okay. Advantages of data modeling. The main goal of designing data model is to make certain that data objects offered by the functional team are represented accurately. The data model should be detailed enough to be used for building the physical database. Mainly, yung conceptual at saka logical database data models mo is readable enough ng isang programmer para ma-code niya ng SQL. Ayun. For building physical database. The information in the data model can be used for defining relationship between tables, primary and foreign keys, and stored procedures. Ayan. Data model helps business to communicate within and across organizations. Data models helps to document data mappings in extract, transform, and load processes. Data modeling also help to recognize correct resources of data to populate the model. Okay. Ayan. So, limitations of data modeling. So, pagka mag-model ka ng data, mag-create ka ng data model, so, alam mo dapat yung normally nga is yung dine-develop nating information system is existing na. Bihira yung client na magpapagawa sa'yo na bago. Kumbaga wala pang existing na na mga tables. Normally yung mga mga pinagpapa-develop sa atin is nasa Excel, for example, yung kanilang mga data. And kailangan i-analyze mo, kuhanin mo kung ano yung mga characteristics ng mga Excel sheets, for example. Ano yung mga columns na naandun, paano sila sinusort, and pagka pinaghiwa-hiwalay mo, for example, so imaginein mo, merong mga tables na column A to column, ano ba yung pinakahuling column ZZ, column double Z yung ano, yung pinakahuling column for example. So, ang daming columns nun. So, pag pinaghiwa-hiwalay mo, dapat familiar ka kung paano dapat paghiwalayin yun. Okay, so pagka gumawa ka nitong, this is a navigational system, produces complex application development and management. Thus, it requires a knowledge of biographical truth. Ano kaya ibig sabihin niya dito? Okay, galing lang to sa reference. So, pero pagka gumawa kasi ng ng maraming data models, makakapag-create ka ng iba't ibang mga documents. So, I'm thinking na ang sinasabi niya dito na dapat pag nag-refer ka sa isang table, alam mo kung paano siya hahanapin dun sa mga documentations mo. Ayan. So, hopefully, yun yung ibig sabihin niya dito. No? Kasi, normally, pagka gumagawa ka ng mga enterprise-wide na mga database systems, pag hindi mo mahanap yung isang data element, aksaya sa oras yun eh. So, time is money pagdating sa software development. So, pagka hindi mo makita yung isang bagay, nako, bumibilang na yung oras. Instead na income yung aasahan nyo, ay magiging negative kasi dumadami yung oras na na-spend nyo. Okay? Even smaller change made in the structure require modification of the entire application. So, ito limitation ng data modeling. However, pag maganda talaga yung database design mo, this may not be the truth. Okay, so meron kasi mga database designs na pag nag-change ka ng small change, you don't need to modify the entire application. But if your database design or data model is bad, ayun, saka na isang symptom yun ng bad database design nga na ang hirap baguhin nung system na ginawa mo. Na small change lang, ayun, bago na yung program, which is costly. Alam naman natin na yun nga, time is money sa development. There's no set data manipulation language in database management. Although meron tayong standard, yung SQL, pero yung specific sa database management system, yun nga, kung MySQL ang gamit mo, kung Postgre, may pagkakaiba yung dalawang yun. So, may pros and cons ang bawat database management system and magkakaiba rin ng hardware yung ginagamit diyan. Depende na lang kung gaano ka mahal or kamura. So, kung ano yung technology na afford ninyo, doon doon magfa-follow kung ano yung database management system na gagamitin nyo. For example, bakit ko konti ang gumagamit ng ng SQL, Microsoft SQL? Dahil ang Microsoft SQL, normally, kailangan mong i-set up yan sa Microsoft environment. Ang problema sa Microsoft environment, mabilis mag-hang. So, normally, yung iba pinipili is mga Linux na operating systems kasi hindi masyado nag-hang. Normally, ang Linux is implement, then forget. Pwede mo nang kalimutan, except kung kailangan ng i-upgrade yung system. So, normally, ang Linux ay pwede yung MySQL or pwede rin yung PostgreSQL. Yung ginagamit sa Java, normally Oracle database yan, So, meron silang sariling operating system ng database nila. So, ayun, iba pa rin yung flavor ng SQL na yon. Okay? So, there's no set data manipulation language. Conclusion, data modeling is a process of developing data model for the data to be stored in a database. Data models ensure consistency in naming conventions, default values, semantics or meaning, security while ensuring quality of data. Data model structure helps to define the relational tables, primary and foreign keys, and stored procedures. There are three types of conceptual, logical, and physical data models. The main aim of conceptual data model is to establish the entities, their attributes, and their relationships. Ayan. So, yung conceptual data model is general enough para maintindihan ng mga business persons. While yung logical data model defines the structure of data elements and set the relationships between them. And yung logical data model is good enough to analyze yung data model mo so that to prevent data redundancy and implement other rules for the data. And then yung physical data model describes the database specific implementation of the data model. So this is database management system or DBMS specific na model. So kung sa MySQL yan i-implement, dapat sundin yung rules ng language, database SQL language na yan. The main goal of designing data model is to make certain that the data objects offered by the functional team are represented accurately. The biggest drawback is that even smaller change made in the structure required modification in the entire application. So, ayun, again, yung small change may require modification of the entire application. Again, depende yon sa design ng data model mo. Pagka nagkamali ka, this may be true. Pero pagka maganda yung pagkakagawa mo, may chances are mas mabilis. Hindi kailangan ng malaking modification sa iyong application. Ayan. Okay, so that's it for this topic. And yung next topic natin, doon natin pag-uusapan yung paano dinodrawing. So from conceptual level to logical level ng ating database. Yung physical naman, pinag-uusapan natin yun sa laboratory. Okay, so with that, thank you very much and please answer the related quizzes and activities for this topic. Okay, thank you very much.